It was a warm spring morning in Sunnyvale, California, the kind of day that beckoned you to step outside and soak in the sunshine. Birds chirped energetically from the blooming trees, and the scent of jasmine intermingled with the fresh earth from recently turned garden beds. In my quaint little neighborhood, where picket fences and manicured lawns reigned supreme, I was now the proud owner of a vibrant vegetable garden that stretched across my backyard. The sun bathed my garden in golden light, illuminating rows of lush tomatoes, sprawling squash, and fragrant basil. I could hear the gentle hum of bees busy at work, and the sight of butterflies hovering above the colorful blooms sparked joy within me. Everything felt perfect until I heard a familiar voice slicing through the serene atmosphere. "Emily, are you there?" It was Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of our HOA rules. Dressed in her usual pastel ensemble with matching pearls, she stormed into my backyard, clipboard in hand, and a frown plastered on her face that could curdle milk. "Morning, Karen," I said cheerfully, wiping my hands on my apron. "What brings you to my humble garden?" Her eyes narrowed at the sight of the vibrant chaos that was my backyard. Jubilant flowers jostling for space alongside vegetables, a colorful contradiction amidst the beige conformity that defined Sunnyvale. "Emily, we need to talk about your garden," she declared, her tone frosty. "Oh, what's wrong with it? It looks fantastic." I gestured to the flourishing plants, my pride swelling. "Fantastic is subjective," she huffed, glaring at me as if my garden were an affront to decorum. "The HOA has specific guidelines regarding landscaping. Your garden is disorganized. It's an eyesore." "An eyesore?" I echoed, incredulous as I glanced around, wondering how something so lively could be deemed unworthy. "But it's organic and full of life. People love gardens." "You have until next week to remove these eyesores, or I will be forced to issue a fine. It's in the HOA regulations." She said it as if it were a personal victory, her smile showing only part of her proverbial malicious glee. My heart sank. The HOA had become notorious for its obsession with control, with Karen at the helm, enforcing rules that transformed our once friendly neighborhood into a regimented prison of aesthetic uniformity. I couldn't let her crush my gardening ambition without a fight. Little did I know, her miscalculation was about to lead me down a path of glorious defiance that would transform my backyard into an unexpected community hub and a symbol of rebellion. The events leading up to my confrontation with Karen had roots planted deep within the bureaucracy of our HOA. When I'd moved back to Sunnyvale after years of traveling, I remembered a vibrant community full of life and diversity. However, after a few months, it became clear that the HOA's iron grip had stifled any form of creative expression. Picket fences overshadowed passion, and pristine lawns dominated the landscapes while the spirits of residents faded. I had never thought too much about the HOA until I decided to start my garden. After researching organic gardening, I was motivated by an intrinsic desire to nurture something tangible, something beautiful. I envisioned a space filled with color and life and an oasis for the local flora and fauna. I spent days tilling the soil, planting seedlings, and nurturing them through their early stages. The satisfaction of digging my hands into the earth and seeing the plants flourish was unparalleled. But as I discussed my gardening plans with a few neighbors, the enthusiasm slowly faded when they shared stories of Karen's relentless pursuit of conformity. Some had hesitated, scared of facing fines or punitive measures for expressing their creativity. Their stories sparked a determination in me. I simply refused to have my artistic venture crushed by a bureaucratic monster. When Karen proudly strode into my yard that sunny morning, clipboard in hand, I knew it was game on. In the days following Karen's threat, I received additional warnings from the HOA about my disorganized garden. The notices rapidly escalated from mild warnings to dire threats about fines, legal issues, and even potential removal of my plants. They were suffocating my passion. It felt petty and small-minded. I wanted to fight back, turn my garden from a target into a community celebration. I began brainstorming ideas. What if I turned my garden into something more than just a vegetable plot? What if I could use the threat of fines as fuel to transform my backyard into an attraction that not only celebrated the beauty of gardens, but also fostered community spirit? The first step in my plan was to define an event, a launch party for my newfound vision. I brainstormed ideas for creating a garden gala, an informal gathering where everyone could come to celebrate plants, learn about gardening, and enjoy the fresh produce I'd harvested. I reached out to neighbors, including Jack and Mrs. Patel, who were quick to support this endeavor. "Count me in," Jack exclaimed, his eyes brimming with excitement. "We could set up outdoor art displays, maybe even host a little market to sell jams or vegetables." "Sounds wonderful," Mrs. Patel said, her hands glimmering with enthusiasm. "My rhubarb jam is to die for. It will be a great way to showcase your garden." As I spread the word, enthusiasm spread like wildfire. We created colorful flyers, inviting everyone from our little neighborhood and nearby areas. Anticipation grew. Even those who had initially sided with Karen began to peek over their fences, curious about the event. However, Karen wasn't oblivious to my plans. The day before the gala, she stormed into my yard, stopping short when she saw the decorations being put up. My garden had exploded into an array of colors festooned with fairy lights, handmade signs, and pots of flowers. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, hands on hips like an indignant vacationing queen in her gated community. "I'm preparing for our neighborhood garden gala," I replied defiantly, the corners of my mouth slightly smirking. "We're celebrating the beauty of gardening and opening our arms to the community. Wouldn't you like to join us? This is a direct violation of HOA regulations," she barked, pointing to the flyers. "You could be fined for holding an unauthorized event." "Oh, but it's not unauthorized," I shot back. I connected with neighbors about this celebration. We can gather here to enjoy the beauty of nature. That's not against any HOA rule. Impatiently, she glanced at the flyers. "You can expect the HOA to send more fines. You still have not removed your eyesores." I met her gaze, the tension thickening the air between us. Perhaps when they see the joy this garden brings to the neighborhood, they'll reconsider the idea of eyesores. I was surprised at my own conviction. Karen huffed and puffed, her face a mask of indignation, but as she turned to leave, I knew it was already too late. My plans were in motion, and nothing could stop the energy brewing in Sunnyvale. The day of the gala dawned bright and clear, a spark of hope dancing in the blue skies above. I set up tables for delicious snacks, garden crafts for kids, and educational booths where neighbors could swap seeds and gardening tips. The energy was electric as neighbors began to gather. They came with their various dishes, excitement bubbling in their laughter. As the event commenced, something magical unfolded. I watched families mingle, children mesmerized by the colorful plants, and joyful smiles spread across the once stifled community. The food was plentiful, my garden the centerpiece of this joyous occasion. Mrs. Patel's rhubarb jam was a hit, and Jack's quirky art pieces adorned corners of the yard. "Emily, this is incredible," said one neighbor, her face glowing with joy as she sampled a slice of zucchini bread fresh from my oven. "Who would have thought gardening could bring us all together like this?" I beamed, the pride in my heart blossoming fiercely. But then, a shadow loomed across our gathering. Karen arrived, flanked by a couple of HOA board members who wore expressions more suited for a funeral than a celebration. "Emily," she called out, making a beeline toward me. "This is unacceptable. You need to stop this gathering right now." "Why? We're simply celebrating our love for gardening and community," I defended, keeping my voice steady. One of the board members glanced around, initially looking displeased. "We're concerned about the noise level and crowds. This is clearly a violation of HOA rules regarding gatherings." "Karen," I countered, my resolve not trembling. "We have every right to enjoy our property, and the rules are meant to foster community, not stifle it. And besides, everyone is enjoying themselves peacefully." The tension hung in the air, neighbors shifting uncomfortably as they turned their eyes toward Karen, waiting for her next move. But something shifted. There was a sense of unity among the residents, a realization that we were more than just individuals trying to fit into Karen's idea of an ideal neighborhood. Slowly, someone from the crowd spoke up. "For years, we've watched you impose your rules on us, Karen. We're tired of your tyranny." Cheers erupted as other residents joined in. "Yeah, this is our home too." Karen's expression morphed from indignation to disbelief as the crowd rallied against her stance. She looked utterly flabbergasted, her clipboard trembling in her grip. As she backed away, I felt a wave of empowerment wash over me. If the HOA really wants to support the homeowners, they should support our community spirit and not stifle it with fines, Karen. The crowd erupted in a rallying cheer, celebrating newfound unity and shared passion. Karen spun on her heels, ushering her shocked companions out of my garden, but it was too late. She had lost control. The cheers of the community intensified, surrounding me like a warm embrace, and a newfound sense of energy coursed through the crowd. The clamor that rose in the air was beyond recognition. It was a declaration of defiance. I knew we were at a pivotal moment, and I seized the opportunity, raising my voice above the jubilation. Let's take this moment to celebrate not just gardening but our right to express ourselves as neighbors. I shouted, my heart racing with excitement. Let's stand together against any tyrant who thinks they can dictate how we live. As I spoke, the crowd erupted in applause, their enthusiasm palpable. For the first time in months, the tension and fear that had cast a shadow over our community began to lift, replaced by a storm of unity and defiance. Children danced around, their laughter ringing clear, while adults clinked glasses filled with homemade iced tea, reveling in the moment. Karen arrived, flanked by a couple of HOA board members who wore expressions more suited for a funeral than a celebration. Her eyes flared with indignation as she stepped forward, determined to crush the joy burgeoning around her. "Emily," she called out, her voice dripping with authority. "This is unacceptable. You need to stop this gathering right now." "Why, Karen?" I retorted, clutching a spatula in one hand as I pointed to the crowd. "We're simply celebrating our love for gardening and our community. Wouldn't you like to join us?" "This is a direct violation of HOA regulations," Karen barked, her face flushed. "You could be fined for holding an unauthorized event." The tension in the air thickened, the once celebratory atmosphere now crackling with apprehension as my neighbors looked back and forth between Karen and me. I took a deep breath, refusing to let her intimidate me. "But it's not unauthorized." I raised my voice above her protests. "We're gathering in our own home, sharing food and celebrating life. There's nothing in the HOA rules that says we can't do that." One of the HOA board members, a woman named Linda, exchanged skeptical glances with her fellow board member. "We're concerned about the noise level in the crowd, Emily," she said hesitantly. "This is clearly a violation." I interrupted, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "Concerned? Look around. People are happy, kids are playing, and nobody is causing trouble. Isn't that what we all want?" Then a voice rang out from the crowd, a neighbor with whom I had shared countless cups of tea. "For years we've been told how to live. I'm tired of being afraid of fines every time I want to enjoy my own backyard." Another neighbor, Tom, chimed in. "Yeah, this is our home too, Karen. We deserve to have fun." More voices joined in, creating a cacophony of support that surged through the air. Jack stood at the forefront, fists raised triumphantly above his head. "There's nothing wrong with gardening. It's our right to enjoy nature and build friendships without being policed for every little thing." But Karen wasn't finished. "You don't understand. The HOA has rules for a reason. This kind of gathering can lead to chaos." Her desperation shimmered in her eyes as she struggled to maintain control. "Chaos?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call people coming together? Friends sharing food and laughter? This is what community looks like. Why can't you see that?" The crowd rallied again, their spirit unyielding. "Emily, Emily, Emily," they shouted in chorus, their chants cascading like a wave, lifting me high. I felt each rhythm of their voices empower me, propelling me to fight harder for freedom. As I faced Karen, my resolve solidified, spurred on by the faces of my neighbors, cheering for hope and unity. Karen stepped closer, her expression darkening. "Just because you have a crowd doesn't mean you're in the right. The HOA is prepared to take action," she reiterated, her voice low and threatening. My heart pounded, yet I remained unyielding. "And we are prepared to fight back. Not just for our gardens, but for the right to choose how we live." As I locked eyes with Karen, a flash of something, fear perhaps, crossed her features. I wasn't just challenging her authority. I was igniting passions that had long been dormant. I continued, gesturing widely to my flourishing garden teeming with life. "This isn't about me, Karen. It's about all of us, not just the ones you choose to control. This garden stands as a symbol of vitality and creativity. We're not going to let you take that away." Take it away? You have no idea what you're doing, she hissed, her voice rising in desperation. On the contrary, I replied, my voice steadier than ever. This entire community will flourish if we reclaim it. For too long, you've suffocated not just gardens but spirits. Look around you. The crowd erupted once more, voices swelling into an overwhelming tide. Yes, we want freedom. That was it, the turning point. The energy in the backyard shifted, and Karen's facade of control began to crumble. In a desperate last-ditch attempt, she whirled and shouted, I will make sure you're all punished for this. You will regret this day. Regret bringing our community together? I shot back, my heart racing. You're the only one who should regret trying to break us apart. My heart pounded as I continued. Everyone here today knows the stakes, our right to live without fear of a fine lurking behind every flower. By now it was obvious that Karen was losing her grip on the room, and perhaps even her control over the HOA. Someone from the crowd, a gentleman named Pete, raised his voice and said, It's time we redefine the rules. The community needs voices that listen. Karen's expression twisted with fury, her eyes darting as she realized she was completely outnumbered. The crowd continued to chant slogans of empowerment, standing resolute. Get used to this, Karen, I shouted over the chorus, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. We're not backing down. Staring at the sea of supporters who had come together, I marveled at the transformation that had taken place. No longer were we a collection of homes. We had become a community, shoulder to shoulder, standing tall against the pressures of uniformity. In that moment, I could see Karen's authority slipping away. She pivoted, mumbling under her breath as she realized it was clear she had lost this round, and perhaps even the war. You all are making a huge mistake, she stammered, backing away under the weight of our gazes. But as she retreated from our garden celebration, it was no longer fear that reigned in my heart, but triumph. We had not only stood our ground, but turned our gathering into a powerful statement for the soul of our community. I watched her leave, my heart swelling with newly found hope. Our collective voice had made a difference. This moment would be marked not only in the soil of my garden, but in the very bonds that connected us as neighbors and friends. Come on, everyone, I exclaimed as we watched Karen disappear. Let's keep the celebrations going. Let's showcase what this garden really stands for. The cheers erupted once again, rejuvenated and emboldened. It was our victory, not just for my garden, but for every voice that had been silenced in fear. Together, we were planting seeds of change, both in our backyards and within our hearts. The triumphant echoes of our garden gala reverberated through the neighborhood long after the last guests had left. The fight against Karen had galvanized us, transforming our once divided community into a tapestry of support, creativity, and resilience. As I stood in my backyard, surrounded by leftover decorations strewn down the grassy expanse like remnants of a jubilant celebration, I felt an exhilarating sense of accomplishment. Jack ambled over, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets, a grin plastered across his face. Can you believe that just happened? He chuckled, still riding the high from our newfound momentum. I thought I'd have to start giving history lessons about community rights at that HOA meeting. I laughed, shaking my head. Honestly, I felt like I was in a movie. You know, the underdog finally rises up and makes a stand. My heart swelled with pride as I thought of how we all took a stand together against the oppressive reign of Karen. But it was more than just me. It was everyone. Every single neighbor who came together today. Jack nodded in agreement. And look at the result. This is just the beginning. We can create an annual festival to celebrate gardening and community spirit. Do you know how many parents I heard talking about letting their kids join a community garden project? Exactly, I said, feeling a fresh wave of inspiration wash over me. This could lead to something bigger, a way to share knowledge, foster friendships, and spread the love of gardening. As we cleaned up the remnants of our gathering, I caught glimpses of the newly bonded community all around. I noticed Mrs. Patel chatting animatedly with a young couple, showing them her prized heirloom tomatoes. The joy was palpable as laughter danced through the air, a symphony of newly forming connections and companionship. I walked over, eager to join the cheerful conversation. Looks like you're giving them the Tomato 101 course, Mrs. Patel, I teased, my smile bright. "Oh, Emily," she exclaimed with delight, her eyes twinkling. "I just shared my rhubarb jam recipe with them too. I think they were amazed to learn that I once managed to grow a 20-pound pumpkin." The couple looked astonished and grinned, clearly enjoying their initiation into our gardening community. "I can't believe it. A 20-pound pumpkin? Now that's impressive," one of them said. "We were just marveling at the beauty of your garden." I beamed with pride, glancing around at the flowers swaying gently in the breeze, the vibrant colors drawing admiration from onlookers. "Thank you. It's amazing what we can create together, our own little slice of paradise." Later that evening, I hosted an informal gathering of neighbors on my patio, where stories and laughter flowed like the wine. As the sun began dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange, I called everyone's attention. "Tonight, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on everything that happened today," I said, my voice steady yet full of emotion. We started this journey as individuals, feeling trapped by rules and limitations. But together, we broke down those barriers, not just for our gardens, but for our right to enjoy life without fear. Amidst the crowd, some nodded enthusiastically, while others clinked their glasses in agreement. Sure, the HOA had its rules, but we found our voice today. We transformed our fears into flowers and our frustrations into friendships. And look at us now. I gestured to the smiling faces surrounding me. We are a family, one that nourishes not just plants, but each other. Cheers erupted as everyone raised their glasses. "To Emily, to our community," they chanted. The camaraderie felt as intoxicating as the sweet wine we shared. The following weeks continued to solidify our bond, and soon we organized weekly community gardening days. We exchanged seeds, taught each other planting techniques, and even began a newsletter where residents could share tips and success stories from their own gardens. I felt like a proud mama hen, nurturing not just plants, but a vibrant community. Then, a significant moment arrived when the neighborhood HOA met once more. This time, not to impose rules but to create a new mission, reflective of the values everyone in Sunnyvale now shared. I received an invitation to the meeting, heart racing at the thought of having a voice at the table. On the day of the HOA meeting, I stood at the front of the room, surrounded by familiar faces. Karen sat in the back, a shadow of her former self, arms crossed, an expression unreadable. The air was charged with anticipation, the tension palpable, yet this time it felt different. Jack sat beside me, nudging me gently. "You got this, Emily. Just remember, you're not alone." Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "We're here today to discuss not just regulations but the heart of our community. We've witnessed the power of togetherness, and it's undeniable." The crowd murmured in agreement, the energy shifting positively as I continued. "Our gardens symbolize more than just aesthetics. They represent our connection to the earth, to each other, and to the joy of nurturing life. We need rules that reflect our values, foster creativity, and build relationships instead of barriers." As I spoke, I could see the nods of approval multiplying. Neighbors chimed in, sharing their own stories of how we had all come together to challenge conformity and create community joy. The board listened, and I couldn't help but notice the unease rippling through Karen. When I finished, the applause was deafening. "Let's propose a new vision." Tom stood, clearly excited. "A community that thrives on encouragement rather than enforcement. How about we turn our neighborhood into a collective of creativity and collaboration?" Another neighbor, Samantha, chimed in. "Why not establish community guidelines that celebrate diversity and unique landscapes? We should be proud of our individual gardens, not ashamed." From the back, Karen finally spoke, her tone shaky and defensive. "This is not how the HOA operates. Rules exist to maintain order and—" "Order?" someone interjected. "More like rule by fear. We fought to reclaim our voices. If we don't represent change, we'll lose everything we've built together." I felt a rush of adrenaline as it became clear that Karen was outnumbered. "We're here to build bridges, not walls." I spoke firmly, locking eyes with Karen. "It's time to move forward, together." Finally, Karen's resolve cracked. She slumped back in her chair, speechless. The crowd surged with support as they designated the new committee to redefine the vision of the HOA. We voted to establish a community garden committee, and I was asked to chair it, a title I accepted, thriving on the ecstasy of new beginnings. As the meeting concluded and everyone filtered out, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. We had not only survived Karen's reign, but we had also started a new chapter. I glanced back and saw Karen's expression, a mix of disbelief and resignation, and I felt a flicker of empathy for her. Perhaps she, too, had once dreamt of a harmonious community before the rules had consumed her. The next weeks turned into months, and our gardens flourished just as our connections deepened. We hosted seasonal festivals, showcasing harvests, cooking contests, and even craft fairs that turned our streets into a festival of colors and aromas. Years later, I still stood in my garden, soaking in the beauty we created. It felt alive, a buzzing microcosm of community spirit. The laughter of children rang out as families mingled and exchanged stories over the picket fences. I smiled wide, deeply content. This is what community is, I mused to myself, admiring the array of flowers and vegetables intermingling harmoniously. I thought of how far we had come and what had been born out of rebellion. Suddenly, Jack ambled over, holding a small bouquet of mixed blooms. "Look at this beauty I found growing wild," he grinned, handing it to me. "Thought it'd pair nicely with your garden." I took the bouquet, feeling the vibrancy of those flowers symbolize resilience. "This is perfect. Here's to wild growth, Jack. Thank you for standing with me through all of this." And with that, as the sun dipped low in the horizon casting a warm glow, I knew that we each had the power to cultivate our lives and our gardens. We just had to stand together to reclaim our spaces. Each petal reminded me of the strength of community, the beauty of connectedness, and the promise that we always had the ability to turn our fears into vibrant blooms of hope.